Imagine walking into a room where power, history, and reputation hang in the air like a thick fog, and someone dares to insult the woman who stands at the center of it all. A rich kid, born with money and privilege, thought he could throw a word around, a word heavy with judgment, heavy with malice, and change reality itself. He called her a streetwalker, just like that. No hesitation, no awareness of the legacy surrounding her. But here's the truth. Money can buy many things: luxury, comfort, influence. It can even buy fear in some people. Yet, there are forces money cannot touch. Forces like respect earned over decades, history shaped by courage, and a reputation forged in a world that demanded survival, intelligence, and strength. And in this moment, that rich kid learned a lesson he could never pay for. You see, the story behind that insult isn't just gossip. It's a window into a world that most will never understand. A world of grit, strategy, and influence that doesn't depend on dollars in the bank. It's about a woman who walked beside one of the most powerful figures in her city, who understood the unspoken rules, the risks, and the silent power that comes from knowing your worth. She wasn't just the wife of a crime boss. She was a force in her own right, someone whose life and choices carried weight far beyond the reach of casual insult. Today we're going to peel back the layers. We'll uncover why that single word, thrown carelessly, could never touch her truth. We'll reveal how privilege sometimes blinds people, making them think they can rewrite history with a sentence, forgetting that some legacies are immune to wealth, influence, or social status. And we'll explore the lessons this moment teaches us, not just about respect, but about power, identity, and the deep undercurrents of human behavior that money can never control. By the end of this video, you'll understand the difference between superficial authority and true influence. You'll see how reputation is built quietly, over years, and why some people, no matter how loud, rich, or entitled, cannot erase the mark of history. You'll learn how words, even when meant as weapons, often fall flat against the weight of lived experience. And you'll discover why the richest wallets often come with the poorest understanding of legacy. So lean in, because this isn't just a story about insult or wealth. It's a story about truth, resilience, and the invisible power that flows from experience and character. And once you see it, you'll never underestimate the quiet strength of someone who has walked through fire and come out unscathed. Someone whose reality money can't rewrite, no matter how hard it tries. This is the moment that shows us even privilege has limits, even influence has boundaries, and even the boldest insults are powerless against history. Stay with me, because by the end you'll see why respect, legacy, and truth are priceless, and why some lessons once learned leave a mark that money can't touch. Before we talk about the incident that shocked many, it's important to understand the man at the center of this story, Bumpy Johnson. He wasn't just any figure in Harlem. He was a legend. Born in the early 1900s, he grew up in a world of struggle, poverty, and limited opportunities. But he quickly learned to navigate the streets with intelligence, strategy, and a presence that demanded respect. Bumpy wasn't just tough. He was smart, calculating, and deeply aware of the power dynamics around him. People didn't just fear him, they admired him. He became a symbol of influence in a city that thrived on both ambition and danger. Before we talk about the scale of his influence, it's worth noting that Bumpy Johnson's reputation wasn't built overnight. He spent years earning it, carefully balancing respect and fear. He understood the streets, the people, and the politics of Harlem in a way that few ever could. He moved with precision, always thinking several steps ahead. It wasn't just about power for him, it was about control, stability, and leaving a mark that would last long after he was gone. His ability to read people, anticipate threats, and maintain authority in a chaotic environment made him a central figure in Harlem's social and criminal landscape. Before we talk about the criminal empire he built, it's essential to realize that Bumpy Johnson's influence went beyond mere street operations. He became a key player in organized crime, establishing connections that reached far outside the boundaries of Harlem. He worked with major figures in the underworld, building alliances and managing conflicts in ways that maintained his dominance. His operations were strategic, often involving gambling, drug distribution, and protection networks that ensured he remained untouchable by rivals and law enforcement alike. Unlike many who rely solely on brute force, Bumpy relied on intelligence, strategy, and reputation to expand his reach. Before we talk about his empire, we should acknowledge that his influence wasn't just feared, it was respected. He had a way of commanding loyalty that few could match. People followed him not just out of fear of what he could do, but because they recognized his vision, leadership, and understanding of the streets. This ability to inspire loyalty created a network that made him almost untouchable. Even law enforcement found it difficult to challenge him directly, because he understood the system, manipulated it when necessary, and always stayed several steps ahead. His legacy as a crime boss isn't just about the illegal activities he conducted, it's about the way he structured his influence, ensuring that he remained a dominant figure for decades. Before we talk about how this connects to his personal life, it's worth emphasizing that Bumpy Johnson's name has become synonymous with Harlem itself. His story is a mix of danger, respect, and cultural impact. He shaped the neighborhoods he moved through, influenced the people around him, and left an imprint on history that goes far beyond crime. Understanding his empire and his role in organized crime helps explain why his family, his wife, and even the people who insulted them could never truly understand the weight of his legacy. Bumpy Johnson was more than a crime boss. He was a symbol of power, resilience, and influence that still resonates today. Before we talk about the world that surrounded Bumpy Johnson, it's important to understand the woman who stood beside him, Mamie Hatcher Johnson. She wasn't born into fame, money, or influence. She came from North Carolina, a place where life demanded resilience, hard work, and determination. From an early age, Mamie learned the value of independence. She held jobs, supported herself, and built a life with her own effort before she ever met Bumpy. She wasn't simply a figure in someone else's story. She had her own story, her own ambitions, and her own strength that shaped who she became. Before we talk about her connection to Bumpy, we should understand that Mamie was a woman who carried herself with dignity. She was intelligent, aware, and never intimidated by the world she entered. Her background gave her perspective, grounded her in reality, and helped her navigate the complex and often dangerous life she would step into after meeting Bumpy. Unlike many women of the era who were defined by the men around them, Mamie had her own identity and her own values. She knew the importance of perseverance, of understanding her surroundings, and of maintaining her sense of self even when circumstances tested her. Before we talk about the life she shared with Bumpy, it's crucial to note that their relationship began in a time when Harlem was both vibrant and volatile. They married in 1948, a union that would last 20 years until Bumpy's death in 1968. During this time, Mamie wasn't just a passive partner. She played a critical role in supporting him, understanding his world, and managing the challenges that came with being married to a man whose life was constantly under threat. Her loyalty and intelligence made her an indispensable companion in a life that required constant vigilance and careful decision-making. Before we talk about the challenges she faced, it's important to highlight her unique strength. Mamie navigated a world of risk and reputation with a clarity and courage that few could match. She understood the social and cultural dynamics around her, and maintained her dignity, despite rumors, insults, or public scrutiny. She witnessed firsthand the pressures of power, the consequences of choices, and the weight of being married to a man whose name carried both fear and respect. Through it all, she remained steadfast, proving that strength isn't just measured by physical action, but by the ability to endure, adapt, and maintain composure in the face of adversity. Before we talk about the legacy she left behind, it's worth remembering that Mamie Hatcher Johnson was more than just the wife of a legendary crime boss. She was a woman of her own making, shaped by her experiences in North Carolina, and refined by the realities of Harlem. Her life alongside Bumpy was one of partnership, strategy, and resilience. From 1948 to 1968, she lived a life that required courage and intelligence, and she did so with a sense of purpose and dignity that commands respect even decades later. Understanding who Mamie was helps us see the full picture, not just of Bumpy Johnson, but of the woman who stood beside him and carried her own legacy with strength and grace. Before we talk about the insult itself, it's important to understand the vast social gap that existed between the rich kid and Mamie Hatcher Johnson. On one side, you had someone born into wealth, privilege, and comfort, someone who had never faced the harsh realities of survival in a world shaped by struggle, resilience, and reputation. On the other side, you had a woman whose life had been forged through determination, intelligence, and an intimate knowledge of power earned, not inherited. She understood consequences, influence, and respect in ways money could never teach. This gap wasn't just about wealth, it was about life experience, understanding, and the weight of history. Before we talk about why the insult cuts so deep, consider the perspective of Mamie. To her, the streets of Harlem, the challenges she faced, and the life she built with Bumpy weren't just stories, they were reality. Every decision she made, every risk she took, carried meaning and consequence. In contrast, a wealthy youngster, shielded by family fortune, could afford to throw words carelessly, assuming that money could shield him from accountability. This kind of privilege often creates a false sense of power, where insults are delivered without thought, and history is treated as if it can be rewritten with a single sentence. Before we talk about the impact of the word itself, it's essential to understand why reputation matters in Mamie's world. Respect wasn't given lightly, it was earned over years of navigating challenges, maintaining composure, and demonstrating loyalty. A careless insult, especially one questioning her character or dignity, doesn't just offend, it attempts to undermine a lifetime of effort, resilience, and identity. For someone who has built her life through experience, strategy, and integrity, an accusation based on ignorance and privilege is meaningless on the surface, but it can feel like a direct attack on the very essence of who she is. Before we talk about the psychology behind such insults, consider the contrast in perspective. The rich kid might think he's asserting dominance or showing cleverness, but in reality, he is exposing his own naivety. He lacks understanding of the layers beneath the surface, the history, the struggles, and the subtle power dynamics that define respect in Mamie's world. His words may carry weight in a boardroom, or among people who measure status by money alone, but they fall flat against a legacy built in a very different currency, one of lived experience, courage, and influence earned, not bought. Before we talk about the lesson embedded in this moment, it's clear why such insults resonate far deeper than most imagine. They reveal a clash between two worlds, one of inherited privilege, and one of proven resilience. They expose the arrogance that comes with wealth untempered by understanding. They remind us that words, when misused, can show more about the speaker than the target. And they demonstrate that true respect, legacy, and dignity cannot be diminished by someone who has never walked the path, never faced the risks, and never understood the depth of the history they are attempting to insult. This gap, this collision of worlds, is why a single word carelessly spoken can reverberate far beyond the moment, teaching lessons about humility, respect, and the invisible power that comes from a life truly earned. Before we talk about the weight behind the word itself, it's important to understand what the term streetwalker really means, and why it carries such a heavy historical load. On the surface, it may seem like a simple insult, a crude way to question someone's character, but in reality, it is steeped in centuries of judgment, social bias, and cultural assumptions about women, morality, and class. The term has long been used to stigmatize women who step outside the narrow roles society has assigned to them, often reducing their entire identity to a single degrading label. It's not just a word, it's a weapon designed to shame, isolate, and diminish. Before we talk about why it resonates so strongly, consider its historical context. For generations, women who were labeled with this term were marked as dishonorable, unworthy, or morally corrupt, regardless of the truth of their lives. The label carries assumptions about behavior, class, and morality that were never equally applied to men. It reflects a world where women's worth was measured largely by their perceived purity or obedience, and where social status could be weaponized against them. In many ways, the term is a shortcut for societal judgment, collapsing an entire human being into a single derogatory stereotype. Before we talk about how this affects honor, it's essential to recognize that the insult attacks more than just personal character, it strikes at identity itself. For someone like Mamie, whose life was defined by resilience, intelligence, and dignity, being called this term challenges the foundation of her honor. Honor in her world isn't just a superficial reputation, it is earned through endurance, loyalty, and navigating a complex social landscape. To use this word against her is to attempt to erase the years of effort, the sacrifices, and the integrity she maintained, suggesting that all of it can be dismissed by a careless label. Before we talk about its impact on class, the term also carries implications about social standing. It is historically associated with those perceived as lower in society, those who supposedly lack respectability or refinement. When thrown at someone from a position of power or wealth, it is meant to belittle and assert dominance. But in doing so, it reveals ignorance. Wealth and status cannot erase lived experience, and history cannot be rewritten by insult. This is why class-based insults often fail against individuals whose lives were built through knowledge, strength, and strategic influence rather than inherited privilege. Before we talk about its attack on womanhood, the label is particularly loaded because it undermines autonomy, choice, and identity. It reduces a woman to a stereotype, ignoring her intelligence, her resilience, and her contributions to family, community, or even cultural legacy. It assumes a narrow definition of worth, one that is entirely dictated by others, rather than earned or self-defined. For a woman who navigated Harlem's complex social and criminal worlds with composure and courage, such a term is not just inaccurate, it is an affront to her very existence. Before we talk about why this matters today, it's clear that some words carry power far beyond their letters. They carry history, judgment, and societal bias. They attack honor, manipulate perceptions of class, and attempt to erase womanhood. Understanding this context helps us see why a single careless word, spoken without thought, can be far more damaging than many realize, while also showing why true dignity, earned through resilience and integrity, can never be diminished by ignorance or prejudice. Before we talk about the rumors and insults that have been thrown at Mamie Hatcher Johnson, it's important to separate fiction from reality. For decades, whispers and gossip circulated about her life, fueled by assumptions, jealousy, and misunderstanding. People who had no connection to her world or experiences labeled her unfairly, reducing a complex, strong woman to a single derogatory word. But the real history of Mamie tells a very different story, one of resilience, intelligence, and dignity. She was far more than the caricature painted by those who knew little of her life. Before we talk about her role as a wife, it's worth noting that Mamie was a partner to a man who navigated dangerous territory every day. Her marriage to Bumpy Johnson was not a passive arrangement. She was deeply involved in understanding the world he operated in. She supported him, maintained her own sense of identity, and became a stabilizing force in a life defined by risk and unpredictability. Far from being a shadow figure, she stood as an equal in many ways, offering insight, guidance, and unwavering loyalty. Her life with Bumpy was one of partnership, strategy, and resilience, and that reality is often lost in the noise of rumors. Before we talk about her contributions beyond the marriage, it's essential to recognize her as an author and storyteller. Mamie eventually shared her experiences in a memoir, giving readers a rare glimpse into the private life of one of Harlem's most notorious figures. Her writing wasn't sensationalized gossip, it was a reflection of lived reality, offering perspective on the complexities of power, loyalty, and survival in a world most people could never fully comprehend. Through her words, she provided context for Bumpy Johnson's choices, the challenges he faced, and the environment that shaped both of their lives. Her memoir became an important source for historians, writers, and anyone seeking a truthful account of Harlem's history, revealing insights that went far beyond the headlines or casual assumptions. Before we talk about her influence in the community, it's also important to highlight that Mamie didn't retreat from public life. She became a figure of respect, known not just for her marriage but for her own contributions. She engaged with her community, offered guidance, and became a symbol of strength and dignity. Her life demonstrated that influence isn't measured solely by notoriety or wealth, it is measured by the respect earned through integrity, courage, and commitment. Mamie's example shows that true power often lies in quiet leadership, in the ability to navigate challenges with intelligence, and in leaving a legacy grounded in truth rather than rumor. Before we talk about why this contrast matters, it's clear that understanding the real Mamie Hatcher Johnson challenges the narrative created by careless insults and assumptions. While some sought to define her with a single word, the truth reveals a multidimensional woman, a wife, author, and community figure, who navigated her world with wisdom and resilience. Her memoir, her life, and her actions stand as evidence that history cannot be rewritten by gossip. Respect and legacy are earned through experience, courage, and integrity, and Mamie exemplified all of these qualities, leaving behind a story that is far richer, deeper, and more inspiring than any insult could ever diminish. Before we talk about the limits of wealth, it's important to understand that some things in life cannot be bought, borrowed, or inherited. Legacy, history, and reputation are built over time, through experience, choices, and resilience. They are not measured in dollars or bank accounts. You can grow up in a mansion, attend the finest schools, and inherit vast amounts of money, but none of that changes the truth of who people are, what they've lived through, or the mark they leave on the world. There are layers of influence and respect that money simply cannot touch, and they are often the very things that define real power. Before we talk about perception, consider the world in which Mamie Hatcher Johnson lived. Her life was shaped by grit, determination, and an intimate understanding of Harlem and the people in it. Her experiences, her choices, and the years she spent alongside a man like Bumpy Johnson formed a history that could never be erased by a careless insult or a display of wealth. The rich kid who threw the word streetwalker at her may have thought his privilege gave him authority, but in reality his money was powerless against decades of lived experience and earned respect. Money can open doors, but it cannot rewrite the past or change the perception of those who know the truth. Before we talk about truth, it's important to recognize that wealth often blinds those who possess it. Growing up with privilege can create a false sense of invincibility, a belief that status or money can shield someone from consequences or criticism. But legacy operates on a different level. It is observed, felt, and remembered by communities and individuals who understand the history behind a name. Mamie's reputation was anchored in decades of presence, loyalty, and integrity. No matter how much money someone had, they could not erase the reality of her life, the truth of her character, or the respect she had earned. The attempt to diminish her with an insult was meaningless because money cannot rewrite the stories etched into history. Before we talk about the lessons here, it's crucial to understand that legacy and perception are intertwined. People carry memory, respect, and understanding of others' experiences. These are things that wealth cannot buy. Even a wealthy individual with influence or social standing may appear powerful, but that power is often superficial compared to the depth of legacy built through lived experiences. When the rich kid thought his money could intimidate or redefine reality, he underestimated the strength of a life lived with courage, purpose, and authenticity. Perception in this sense becomes a mirror of truth, showing that history and earned respect cannot be undone by privilege. Before we talk about what this means for all of us, it's clear that wealth is limited in scope. It can provide comfort, access, and opportunity, but it cannot erase history, undo choices, or alter the perception of those who truly understand a person's worth. Money may impress strangers, but it cannot diminish what has been lived, what has been earned, or the legacy that stands firm despite insults, assumptions, or arrogance. True power and respect exist in experience and truth, and in that world, even the richest wallets hold no sway. As we reflect on this story, one thing becomes crystal clear: heritage, identity, and the legacy you build through your choices cannot be bought, inherited, or erased. No amount of money, status, or privilege can rewrite the truth of someone's life, the respect they've earned, or the history they carry with them. Words may be thrown carelessly, insults may be hurled, but they can never touch what is grounded in real experience, courage, and integrity. This story challenges us to think about the way we judge others. It reminds us to look deeper than appearances, wealth, or social status. True respect comes from understanding history, valuing resilience, and appreciating the lives people have built, not from making assumptions based on privilege or rumor. How we measure character and honor speaks volumes about our own awareness and wisdom. So take this as a lesson: the richest wallets and the loudest words hold far less power than lived experience and earned respect. Let it inspire you to honor the depth in others, to recognize the stories that can't be bought, and to reflect on the value of legacy, your own and the legacies of those around you. If you found this video insightful, make sure to like it and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us for more stories that reveal the hidden lessons behind history, reputation, and respect.